Everyone, I'm Rebecca Smith-Aldridge, and thank you for joining us today for our introduction to the Sustainable Library Certification Program. I'm the co-founder of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative and the principal author of the certification program. So maybe you can stump me today. I'll look forward to that. But our goal here today is to help you understand where we're coming from with the certification program and way more specifics about what's involved in it, from the categories of questions to why we ask those questions to best practices for going about the certification program. I saw we already got some questions submitted about how long does it take? How long do we have to do it? How hard is it? So hopefully we'll get to all those questions. I've left plenty of time, so you'll be able to ask more questions if you haven't sent any in yet today. But we will walk you through just some of the basics of sustainability in libraries. If you are not at the first webinar, it's okay. You'll be able to keep up. We'll do a little mini intro to sustainability in libraries. And then we'll take a real closer look at the actual certification program and help you understand more what it looks like, what's entailed, and share some stories from libraries who have gone through the program and completed it successfully, because that number is growing almost every week at this point, which is pretty exciting. So you've got the chat box if you have any issues. You've also got the Q&A area, which I do like when people use in case I miss something in the chat. I'm moderating by myself today, so if you can use the Q&A area, I'd super appreciate it. So as you saw, we are recording here today. If you have any technical difficulties or you get booted off, no problem. We'll send the recording to everyone who's here today. We thought it might also be helpful as you're making the case to maybe folks back at your library who are interested in some of this information as well. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, we're from the Sustainable Libraries Initiative, and you might not be familiar with that organization, but we are basically a group of volunteers just like yourself who really believed that action was necessary when it comes to climate change for libraries. So over the past 7 years, we've been fine-tuning our thinking about that. And as you can see here, what we've done is really start to think about how to empower library leaders. And when we say library leaders, we mean people at all levels of library work. We think that people can be leaders from whatever position you hold at the library, or any trustee or friends group position as well. Everyone has a leadership role to play in this work, because as we all know, every job needs to be a climate job if we're going to make a dent in what's going on in the face of climate change today. So as you can see here, we're not just empowering library leaders, we're doing so specifically. We're looking to help people make better decisions using a lens of the nexus of environmentally sound choices that are socially equitable and economically feasible. We've got that reality check of the economics of the situation, both our local internal economic situations at our libraries, the local economy, and the global impact of climate change, and the nexus with economics, which is something that we don't often think about, but is actually the key driver of climate change at this point. But we really want people to be intentional in this work and not just leave it to chance or wait for Earth Day, but to be thinking all the time in a new way that helps us combat climate change and really be active in adapting in the face of it, while at the same time not losing hope. We want people to be co-creating thriving communities, and libraries to be a big, big part of that. No one agency and no one neighborhood is going to do it on their own. So we want to help position libraries to be really good partners in this work, if not leaders in this work, and leading by example through the choices we make every single day at our libraries, both from an operational standpoint, as well as services, programs, collections, and partnerships. And so that's really the nut of what we're talking about here today is, well, how do you do that? That's a pretty big mission that we've taken for ourselves. So we've gotten some boosting of our work thanks to the adoption of sustainability as a core value in the profession by the American Library Association. And I was wondering how long I can leave this new label on this slide, because we actually just had the 4-year anniversary of sustainability being a core value of the profession, but we're still educating people about what does that actually mean. And I will say that I just am really proud of the American Library Association for adopting this. I should say for us for adopting this, because I'm a member of the American Library Association, just like many of you are, because I think what we saw happen is that Council of ALA recognized the urgency, the call to action that's necessary to actually make a change that's being called upon by the entire society of planet Earth. and the willpower it takes to make moves at that level. It's like, we joke about turning the ship around. We are talking about a very large ship, both in terms of how we think about our economy, how we treat the environment, how we treat humans in our everyday life. And so to have the weight of the American Library Association behind this work is incredibly important. And we've got people on the call today that represent the American Library Association Sustainability Roundtable, which is a fabulous community of practice. You've got your own Sustainability Roundtable in the New Jersey Library Association. We've also got the Council Committee on Sustainability at ALA that's working to help governance choices reflect the values of our association, as well as the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. So we're seeing more and more people in our profession really step up to do work in this area. But we often kind of look around us and say, there's so much to do. Where do you even start? So part of our methodology is really thinking about how you make decisions, large and small. So we use the triple bottom line framework for sustainability, and you'll see that's been adopted by the American Library Association as well, which is super convenient. But what we were trying to do, and we saw we had a very big change in interaction and reaction from people when we stopped talking about greening libraries and we started talking about the triple bottom line, because the minute you scratch the surface on a lot of the green choices that you make, it gets very complicated. You can see there's economic implications for many of the choices that we make, as well as some choices that aren't so great for everyone in our communities and in the world. So we want to make sure we're finding balance in the choices that we make. And so the triple bottom line asks folks to think not just about the cost of a decision, well, at least not just the financial cost of a decision, but to also consider the impact on the environment and on people in all different ways, not just people that look like you or have the same economic background as you or the same educational background as you, but to really understand that there is folks that have been marginalized in our communities that are going to suffer more in the face of climate change and some of the choices we make to combat climate change. So while no decision that you make, unfortunately, in life might be perfect, we think we can make progress, and we're interested in progress, perhaps over perfection in this work. And it's something that's been one of the major tenets of our work over the past 7 years in the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. I'll just share a little story here that about, as I said, 7 years ago, 25 of us in the New York Library Association got together and agreed we had to do something. We were tired of waiting for someone else to tell us what to do when it came to climate change in libraries. And we all just were very humble and said, I don't know what to do. Do you know what to do? No, I don't know what to do. All right, but we got to start somewhere. So that's what we've been doing. And the adoption of this mindset, what we really saw as crucial to the work, was helping people have a mindset shift, to turn away from the way we've always done things and to think about new ways to do things, to make decisions, and what to put at the center of our decision making when making decisions about our communities. Because at the heart of the work of libraries, it's really to help those we serve. Whether you're a public library, academic library, school librarian, it's really about the people that we serve. So we think that the methodology we've come up with, the whole thing uses this framework of the triple bottom line. And you'll see that it scales up and down for size of library, impact on the community, how you run your building, what purchases that you make. It really can be applied in so many different ways. And that's very much helped us create the certification program, because it is a holistic topic. It's touching on like everything. Like the minute you pull the string on something, you realize it's connected to everything else, as that famous quote from John Muir says. So what we were thinking about is, how do we make this doable for people? So when we picked the phrase sustainable libraries, it spoke to our thinking at the time around this topic. What is a sustainable library? Well, we want our libraries that are operating in a strong and authentic way. So read between the lines there. We want libraries to lead by example on these topics. I think if you just are doing programs here and there, or you buy a couple of books, is that really drawing a line in the sand and saying, we value the sustainability of our communities and we want you to thrive thanks to the services that we provide. So we want to create a program that really helps libraries make better decisions in all areas of operations, as well as service program collection and partnership design, as well as how you think about the finances of your institution, of how you think about partnerships that you seek out in your communities and on your campuses. So we think about this from the inside out. We have to work on ourselves before we're putting ourselves out there in the community as a partner on some of these topics. Secondly, we really want libraries to prioritize social cohesion and civic participation, because at the heart of combating climate change and adapting in the face of climate change are the relationships we have with our neighbors. And so deliberately working to build empathy, respect, and understanding for the people in our communities is climate work. And sometimes we don't think of that. And really, we do excellent work in this area already, but we don't necessarily talk about it in this vocabulary and in this framework. So this is a big part of the work that we suggest should be done in this line of thinking as well. And then two things that I think you're not surprised to see at all. The two main areas of climate action work. First, the traditional mitigation work, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We need everyone on the globe to be thinking about how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So thinking about the emissions from how we run our buildings, to transportation issues, to waste reduction. All of these are components of the certification program to help you think through a lot of the choices that we make on an everyday basis and thinking, could we make better choices that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And then, I'm glad to see Michelle Stricker on the line today in New Jersey, obviously a very well-known figure, and honestly, the leading thinker in the country on community resilience work, which is at the heart of climate adaptation. Because the truth is, climate change is already here. It's not some far off thing in the distance, right? We've all here on the East Coast and many other parts of the country already suffered in the face of these severe weather events that are being supercharged by climate change. So adaptation in the face of that requires communities to be able to work together, to pull together and work with maybe emergency management, or to prepare our institutions more for frequent disruptive weather events that are being, again, supercharged by climate change. So these are the four attributes of a sustainable library that you'll find the certification program speaks to. So while the triple bottom line framework, really you find it washed throughout the whole certification program, you'll find more of the specific actions will tie back to these four categories. So I just wanted to share that kind of macro thinking that went into the design of the certification program. It's not just a random collection of actions. There's a true intention behind what we chose to work on through the program. So I think at the heart of this really was the question we were struggling with at our retreat, our very first retreat 7 years ago, which is, how do you create systemic change in a library? How do you move beyond just having a checklist of greening your library or, yep, we did that, let's move on, and really think about how do we make a change for the long haul that changes the way we think as an organization, that reshapes the culture of our organizations so that we have buy-in from our staff, from our boards, from our stakeholder groups, so that we're all working together on some of these very critical issues like climate action. And so that's what we've been designing to for the past 7 years. Our tools, resources, educational opportunities. Did I mention we're all volunteers? We're all volunteers. So creating some best practices and ideas for how to move forward on this work. So you might be familiar with our roadmap to sustainability. That's a free resource from the Sustainable Libraries Initiative for anybody. You can download that and kind of gather your own thinking. It's available as a mobile app, thanks to our partners at OCLC. You can capture your thinking about what you're already doing in this vein, some ideas for partnerships or things you want to work on in the short term and the long term. And then really the biggest resource we've created is what we're here to talk about today, the Sustainable Library Certification Program. And I will be not humble for a minute and note that it is an award-winning program. The Sustainable Libraries Initiative is the first organization in the United States to be recognized by the International Federation of Library Associations through their Green Libraries program for our work on this program. So thumbs up, which is pretty cool for us to say. Matthew Bollerman's on the line today, our other co-founder, and he and I got to go to Athens, Greece to get the award. So that was worth the price of admission. So let's talk about the certification program in detail now. This is, I think, what you're really here to hear more about. And so I just want to, preface this by saying it is designed with the life of a busy library person in mind. We know that you're busy already and you've got a lot on your plate and you don't necessarily have a lot of extra staff to throw at a whole new project. So we've designed it to be very user-friendly. We actually work with Library Market, which many of you may be familiar with, a very popular company in our library land world who builds a lot of library websites. But they did a custom project for us to build basically a dashboard for folks in the program to walk you through the process. So there's no Excel spreadsheet sheet or post-it notes. I mean, you can use post-it notes, but you can really do all the work right in the dashboard through the program, which once you join the certification program, you get a login for. And then there you'll see it walks you through different categories, which we're going to review here today. So you've got a nice online interface to capture your work. It's where you do all your submissions of your examples, your policies, all the ways that you're meeting the action items in the certification program. It's also built in that you've got resources you can click on, see sample policies, check out how other libraries did things in these categories. I just want to stress that this is not a one-size-fits-all program. This is really scaled so that regardless of your size library, your budget, how many staff you have, this should really work for any library of any size. So you do also get a live person who helps you. You get a mentor who's also been through the program. These are folks who volunteer their time and they're really dedicated and passionate about these topics. They can be the person that you vent to, or they throws you a lifeline when you're not sure how to proceed or you get stuck with something. They can help you talk through things. They can help you research stuff. They're really, really wonderful, experienced folks who are just like you. And you've also got access to a wider community of practice. So we have monthly meetups of folks who are in the program. It's just very practical help of how did you manage this, or what do you think of this idea, or has anyone used this vendor before? So it really helps you think through a lot of the work that's encompassed in the action items in the program. And so, I mean, I'm not here to say that it's not work. It definitely is, but you've got a lot of support in doing this work. A lot of research has gone into finding best practices, and you have a growing body of folks who are involved in this program. There's over 70 libraries actively engaged in doing this work. We have over a dozen libraries who have fully completed the certification program. We have a new one that's going to be announced next week, which is very exciting. So again, this body of knowledge is growing and growing, and you get to contribute to that, which is the other, I don't know, I think very cool thing about it is that your voice has weight, your experience has weight. You get to add to the body of knowledge and help the folks that come behind you with the work that's getting done. So you might be curious about these categories. You can see a couple of categories on the screen here. So let's do the grand reveal of what you do the work in. And again, we have different interfaces for public libraries versus academic libraries. And of course, school librarians have a very different program. Right now, school librarians are, that program is only for folks in New York as they're piloting that program. But their program is just to certify themselves as individual professionals, whereas the public and academic library program is certifying your institution. So it's work at a different level, if you will. But you can see in the public and academic libraries categories, you have 12 categories here, and it breaks down the work in terms of the action items. And each of these categories has required action items and then a few recommended action items that you can pick from. You do have to do all the required ones though. And I'll say that we're pretty nice people. So if you're looking at one of those required actions and you're like, oh boy, I don't know how we're going to do this one, or we can't do this one. I'll just share that I had that situation for my own organization when we were going through the program. You know, we just don't have any green space. I'm in an urban area and I just didn't have any green space. So some of the landscaping questions, I'm like, this just doesn't apply. That's totally okay. But at least we thought it through, right? We took the time to ask some of the questions and think it through. And that'll make more sense to you when you see some of the action items. But everyone needs to start with the organizational commitment category. That's obviously listed first and is really key to that topic of how do you build systemic change? How do you change the culture of your organization so that this is not just a checklist, as I said before, but a true transformational process? So the organizational commitment section, it talks about education for your staff and your board or your governing body. It talks about a survey for your staff to help educate them and get their opinion in the work you're going to do. It's some policy work to start embedding a commitment to some of the things that need to get worked on further on down the checklist. So it really sets some of the foundational pieces for the success of your entire experience. But other than the first category, you can do the rest of it in whatever order makes the most sense for your library. You could jump right into social equity work. Maybe that's a goal you already have to do this year, and you can just match that right up. Or maybe you go in order because you're a librarian and you like orderly things. I don't know. But what you can do is run through all of these, and I'll say that you will find you have done some of them already. So while the program is work, it's not always new work. It might be thinking about the work you're already doing in a different way. So there will be educational components if you're not familiar with some of the ideas or the terms terms, and maybe that's what you consider the work, but it's your professional development time to understand how to reduce waste in the organization or how to do a light pollution study on your site. So we have got easy kind of bite-sized entry points to a lot of work that you might already do or has been on the wish list of your library for a very long time. But there will also be things that you never thought of or things that were never on the list and you're going to have to figure out. And I think that's the fun and challenging part of the certification program. So this might be a good time to say there's no ticking clock. Once you start the program, you can work at your own pace. You can take as long as you want, which we think is very important for libraries to acknowledge the work that goes on in our institutions already, that we are not always in control of what happens in our work life, but you can control the fact that this does not have an alarm clock going off on it. So you can take your time, you can work at the pace that works best for you and your team. And I think that that really creates less stress in doing the work that's here, because it is necessary work. It is stuff we should all be thinking about, and it creates the structure for you to do the work and to think through things and to have ready access to resources that support you in doing the work. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really sold on this program. I think it's great. But I can say that we're getting the similar feedback from folks who are in the program and have completed the program as well. So you've got a sense of what the categories are. And when you log into the interface that I mentioned, the online interface, this is kind of what it looks like. Each category has little tiles, and you can go to the required action section. Then below that are the recommended actions, and you click on it and it expands to explain what the action item is asking of you. And then that is bundled with some resources that might be helpful to you to complete that item. And then you've got a little spot below that to give your answer or upload a file or a photo or something else that would help illustrate your work on that particular action item. And again, we understand, like you're not writing a dissertation on each of these action items. Sometimes a photo will do it, sometimes 2 sentences will do it, but what we're looking for is evidence that you thought it through, and maybe it resulted in a new resource or a document for your library that might be useful to other libraries too. So it's building the clearinghouse of examples and ways to do things, as well as just adding to the body of knowledge the profession has about what these things really look like once you've worked on them. So of course, I know you want to see all the action items right now, but I'm not going to give them to you. But I can say there are 140 action items in total. They span these 12 categories for public and academic folks. They are, I think, very doable. Not only did I write them, but I did them myself. So I will say I walked the walk. I didn't just talk the talk. And my organization got slowed down by the pandemic while we were doing this, as did Matt Bollerman, who's on the call here today. But it was interesting how a lot of the work we did before the pandemic, the work we had done in the certification program actually kind of helped prepare us for the pandemic. It helped my team, at least at Mid-Hudson, and I know Lisa Kropp from the Lindenhurst Memorial Library, who also completed this program. You may be familiar with her name. She was the former chair of the Sustainability Roundtable at the American Library Association. She wrote a whole article for American libraries talking about how the work they did here, particularly in the area of community resiliency, prepared them for not only responding in the face of the pandemic to operating their library, but also how to think about the community's needs in the face of an incredibly disruptive event, right? There's not much on the scale of climate change, but the pandemic certainly has given us a run for our money. So I think it's work that will serve you long-term, not only in terms of our responsibility in the face of climate change, but also making your library more resilient, and hopefully with the ultimate goal, right, is to make our communities more resilient. So I just want to make sure we've got that context, that these are not disparate actions. They all line up with those 4 categories of what a sustainable library is. So, benefits of certification, again, we've got plenty of time for Q&A. You can ask me all the questions you want about this stuff, but I would say that, why would you maybe want to use a certification program rather than just going ahead on your own? And I'll just say, I make no money off of this. The board makes no money off of this. The charge that we do have is to help underwrite the website and some of the staff support we get from the Suffolk Cooperative Library system. But I think the benefits of the certification is it actually does save you a lot of time. It creates structure for you. It's a proven methodology methodology that gives you a path forward on some very important work that is, let's be honest, very broad. This touches on so many different aspects of our lives, of how we do work, of how we operate our buildings. And so I think that can feel very overwhelming, and you can get a little lost in the weeds sometimes if left to your own devices. At least that's what was happening to me about 10 years ago. And I think the other really important thing is that it's built around the idea of transformation. Again, not just a checklist, that we're trying to change the way people think long term and create a culture in our organization that puts the triple bottom line at the heart of our decision making. And I just want to share a little story about that from my own organization. I had a team that I put together. I wanted at least one person from every kind of department in my library system. And I had my basically purchasing clerk and finance assistant on the team, and she got very into this very fast and ended up being one of the strongest members of my team, from doing benchmarking work of how much electricity we were using to researching different office supplies and making better choices. And she actually was like finding us more environmentally conscientious choices for office supplies that cost less than the stuff that was worse for the environment. It was like such a win-win. But about 6 months into the program, we had hired a new staff person, and I happened to hear her in the break room with them. And she said, you know, we recycle here. And when you leave the room, please do turn the light off. We like to conserve energy here. And it just was kind of natural. That's just, she was helping someone understand how we do things in this building. And it's really shown a lot of buy-in and ownership of the work we do and the way we run things in my organization, because we had this shared experience. But we also knew that it couldn't just be the people who had that experience making better decisions for the future. We had to think about what happens when new people come into our organization. What happens when we have turnover on our board, right? You want that legacy to live on. So the codification of a lot of the work into policy, into operational manuals, into the documents that help operate your building, into job descriptions, into how we do orientation for maybe our staff and our boards, all of that is built into the program. So you've got a real legacy that is being left by doing this work through the certification program. And I think it also is always wonderful, as you know, through the work you're doing with your state association and the American Library Association, the richness of connecting with our peers and other communities and other states and getting ideas from all over the place of stuff you might never have thought of or never have come across is just, I think, very beneficial. And then, I mean, top right there, who doesn't want to have an impact, right, in the work that we do? And so really positioning ourselves better to be desirable partners in this work, or to be lead partners in work that's going to make a difference for our communities long term. And let's not be, I mean, I'll just put it out there. The other big thing we're doing here is raising the profile of libraries. We want libraries to get a little more respect, right, than we've gotten in the past, which not only, I think, brings goodwill to your library, but hopefully, let's say, maybe money to your library as well, as maybe grants are more accessible to you, or municipal leaders see you as a partner in goals they have when it comes to climate action and community resilience. So we definitely are seeing a growing body of stories in that respect of the folks in the program who are able to get new grants they couldn't have gotten before, because they're speaking a language that is very prominent these days, and federal funding that's available, that's trickling down to our states and municipalities. It's also aligning with a lot of nonprofit goals, as you see more nonprofits kind of banding together to fund climate action work. It puts you in the mix. You're an authentic partner in that work because you are doing the work internally and on behalf of your community. So raising the profile of the library, not that you're making yourself a target, but you're also creating the opportunities that might not have been there otherwise. So I think that's another big benefit of the certification. And I'm going to invite some folks to share other things they think might be a benefit here when we get to the Q&A. But, the real important thing I said before, there's no ticking clock here when you're doing the work, but we all have to understand you are on a journey. It's not a destination. You're not going to arrive at sustainability at the end of your certification program. This is a learning process. It's a way to make decisions. It's progress, again, not perfection. And it's really a way of thinking at the end of the day. And the actions that you're taking, the benefit of them, of course, it always feels good to finish one of the actions, but it's the process by which you finish finish the action. It's what you learn along the way and how that informs future decisions that you're going to be making, whether in the certification program or not. It just ups your, EQ, like your ecological IQ when it comes to doing work, as well as combining it with the work we're all very focused on in equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as the economics of our libraries and our communities. So it's, I think, a nice way to really position your library for future success. So I wanted to show you a few examples of our libraries that have been certified and are involved in the program. And then we'll just wrap up with explaining maybe some ways to get started if you're thinking this might be a really good fit for you. And then, of course, we've got time for questions. So you get a little preview here because this is going to be our announcement next week. The Curtis Memorial Library in Maine has just been certified. You'll see press and news about that next week, and they are a very impressive specimen. You'll be able to see their final presentation. Each library does a final presentation, kind of telling the story of their journey to certification. You can actually see those today on our website, which you have access to right now. And so you can learn from people, even if you don't join the certification program, but don't tell our board that I said that. But if you want to learn from folks, you're getting a wide swath of experiences, things that will maybe fit your needs and your community and your situation, or maybe not. But seeing what other people do sometimes sparks your thinking, right? You're like, oh, well, they did that, but hey, if I just adjusted it like this for my library or my building or my community, oh, all of a sudden, like light bulbs start going off. So this growing body of examples of what folks are doing, I think, is really, really exciting. So just a few things you see here is obviously a library that has been rewilding, that is doing gardening with their communities, that is using their space to create, better indoor air quality by adding plants to library spaces, libraries that are involved with food programs that are not only focused on teaching people about maybe food or healthy eating on a budget, but are collaborating with others in the community, working on some of these topics for that ultimate goal, right, of collective impact on a really tough topic, right? When we talk about poverty or hunger in our communities, these are things that no one organization can solve. So as we look for ways to partner with people and maybe bring ideas to the table in an area we might not be experts in, this is, again, another great way to draw on what we're seeing happen in other libraries through the program. I want to say on the next slide here, top left, the Hendrick Hudson Library is the very first library to be certified through our program. And Jill Davis, who is the director of that library, is one of our collaborators on the certification program. But the opportunity to educate through the choices that you make, it's not just about leading, we've said leading by example, but not just about maybe cutting down your energy bill or getting that grant to do this work, but also modeling things for our community so they can learn about maybe technology that they could apply at their house or ways of doing things that they could apply at home. And so using these opportunities to teach people. So at Hendrick Hudson, they've got solar panels on the roof, and in the children's room, they have a huge flat panel screen monitor that is teaching people about why they chose solar panels and what it means for the community and how it works, which people are always interested to learn more about. So you're seeing a graphic that might display on that screen. You can also see that it's going to put you in a better position to be eligible for grants like the solar grant from EBSCO, which hint, hint is open right now if you're interested in applying for that. But you can also see that there's opportunities to overlay with work that's being done maybe in your state. So here in New York, we have something called the climate smart communities. And you'll see more and more libraries that are in those communities that have municipal support for climate action are joining the program because they can see it's a good idea to align themselves with the philosophy and the plans of our municipalities and to be a resource for people that are in those communities that are working on climate action as well. So finding solidarity in the work, I think, again, is how we help not only be impactful, but raise the profile of our libraries. The next two examples are in my own region here in the Hudson Valley of New York. We have a fabulous, just a wonderful community throughout the Hudson Valley of people concerned about climate change and doing good work in this area. And so libraries have become part of this circle of really fabulous folks doing great work to help our communities throughout the valley. And so we're talking about a very large area, for those of you familiar with New York, between Albany and to New York City. It's a very big area. And we're just connecting with new people, almost it feels to me right now on a weekly basis, that are doing good work. So libraries have become part of the Repair Cafe network in the Hudson Valley. If you're not familiar with repair cafes, I'd be surprised, but it is one of many flavors of repair cafes or fix-it clinics, where we invite folks that know how to fix stuff to teach their neighbors how to fix stuff, and maybe keep those things out of the landfill and reduce the need that you feel you have to buy new all the time, as well as creating community. And it's almost like a sneaky way of creating community. It's respecting local wisdom of people who live in our communities. It's bringing people together to fix things. And maybe it seems very basic, but if we can work together to fix a clock or a watch, maybe we can work together to fix the environment too. So if you're inspired by that idea, like I am, the Repair Revolution book by John Wackman and Elizabeth Knight that you see there on the right. John Wackman was a longtime supporter of the Repair Cafe movement and really brought it to the Hudson Valley. We now have more repair cafes in the Hudson Valley than they do in the Netherlands, which is where this program was founded. But that's much thanks to John's leadership. But right in that book, you'll see a whole chapter on libraries, talking about how libraries are the right place for this work to be happening. And so if we're the right place for that work to be happening, how are we ready for those opportunities? On the left-hand side there, the Climate Carnival was, again, another opportunity to partner with people. There's a nice group of folks, the Climate Partners for Action in the Hudson Valley. And they created this great event where we all came together in the fairgrounds, and we're all like teaching people what we knew and sharing information. And so while I was staffing the booth of the library, learning what you could do through your library on the topic, I was next to a company that's installing heat pumps, and they were telling me how to get the subsidy from New York State to install a heat pump in my home. So that networking opportunity in our communities and on our campuses, there needs to be a catalyst for it. And being a part of the certification program is your excuse, right? It's your excuse to knock on a door, make a phone call, say, hey, I'm working on the certification program. Maybe you could help me with this action item, or I need a little research, or how did you do that? We want to do that at the library. So it's a great way to go and meet people. It's a great excuse, if you will. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of shy. So when I have to go meet someone, I get nervous. But if I have a purpose, if I know I'm trying to accomplish something, it's much easier for me to meet new folks and get to know what they're doing to bring that back to my own organization. Mamakating Library is such a lovely example of a pretty small library who's doing excellent work on these topics. And so I don't let small libraries off the hook when they say, well, this sounds like too much for me. It's like, well, if Mamakating can do it, I think you can do it too. As a small library, the trustees are actually very involved in the work of the certification program. And you'll see highlights in their certification program presentation that just like make you want to move there. Like you can see here on the left-hand side, they have these lighted bike rides on the rail trail near the library. They go out and look at the moon and ride their bikes together in a well-lit way. It's very safe. But you can see they're also focused on voter registration and civic participation and being a part of a community event where folks just come together and maybe talk to someone they never would have talked to before. You can see they've got Jenga set up on the front yard there at the library and comfy seats to sit down and have a chat. And be with people that are your neighbors that maybe we don't necessarily have the excuses to get to know in a way we haven't before. So it's not all about benchmarking your electricity use and conserving water. Of course, those are things we're going to do in this work. But again, that focus on bringing people together and building the social cohesion of our communities and engaging them in a way that makes them want to be civically engaged in our communities and maybe shape the way policy is built for our local places in the future, that puts the environment and people's health more at the center of the policy making overall in our communities. That sounds like a pretty good thing to me. So it's all a grand scheme you can see here now. Now, the next library, I particularly love Charlotte in Vermont because Margaret Woodruff, the director of that library, is on our advisory board and actually was the catalyst for a cohort of 18 libraries in Vermont to join our certification program. And you can see how much fun they are having up there in Charlotte because Margaret's a lot of fun, but you can see their seed library. And there they are creating their little seed packets. They invested in a lot of food related items around hunger and growing food. They got a Charlie cart, and you can use use the QR code there in the center of the slide to learn about the Trolley Cart Project, which really helps with food education and is really suitable to take on the road as well as to have in a library, but it also rolls away if you don't have a big footprint to devote to maybe a kitchen station in your library. But again, so many good ideas for, in some cases, populations that aren't often thought of, and also thinking about aging populations. We're seeing here in the Northeast more and more people in a growing demographic of baby boomers deciding to age in place in the Northeast. And that's going to really change the demographics of our buildings, or our region, obviously, but also how people use our buildings and the programs they're going to be interested in here in the future. Now, I'm almost done, I promise, and you can ask questions, but the next project is one of my own here at the Mid-Hudson Library System, the Library of Local, which is designed to build resilience in our communities throughout the Hudson Valley. So I have 15 libraries of my 66 that are designated as Library of Local locations. They've developed special collections of books and movies, as well as seed libraries and tool lending libraries for gardening. They offer special programs that are coordinated across all of the hubs. That's what we call them, our hub libraries. And so you can see in year one, we focused on food security. People were learning how to grow their own food, preserve their own food, and really work together to grow food. And I see we've got Amanda Travis from the Northern Onondaga Public Library online with us here today. And Mandy is famous for running a library that has the library farm that we love to talk about, but helping people connect with food and where it comes from and what we might do if the supply chain is disrupted, which we just got a real life experience with over the past few years. In year two, we focused on climate solutions and really trying to tap into people understanding about electrification of heating and cooling systems, renewable energy, things that would really help people understand how, again, to mitigate climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But everything is done with a big eye towards climate adaptation and building the relationships of the people in these communities. 11 of our sites align with the Climate Smart Community Project. So we are aligning with municipal leaders, with committees of citizens in those towns that are doing good work on climate change. And the library is a viable partner with them for meeting spaces, for research, for holding programs and educating the public. It's just, honestly, like if I had to dream up the perfect program, this is it. And I'm so delighted that the Climate Partners for Hudson Valley thought it was a good idea and funded it for a few years. So our next project is actually working on something Michelle Stricker brought up when she came to speak in my system, which is talking about libraries as emergency information hubs and how we play a role in the aftermath of severe weather events or other very disruptive events in our community. So that'll be something we can all learn from as we do that research in the next year. So my last example here for you is maybe weird because it's from a library that's done with the certification, and you'll see in their presentation, they're talking about what they're going to do after certification. And what we're finding is folks that finish the certification program, they just keep going. They go back in, they do the recommended actions they didn't get to the first time through. They are setting goals for themselves to keep it all going. You can see Lisa Jacobs here. She's one of our mentors in the program from Longwood Public Library in Suffolk County. They've set goals for themselves. They're going to keep reducing waste in the library. They're going to decrease business travel, increase green purchasing. So they're going to keep that good work going, which again, I think helps keep the culture engaged in some of the work and also helps new people coming on board have some ownership over the work that's necessary that got done during the certification program, but obviously needs to continue to be authentic in the work that we do. So I'm just going to show you getting started, and then we'll go to questions. But I think if this is starting to gel for you and you think like, wow, this might actually be what we've been looking for, or we're really engaged and we want to give this a shot, I'd say some of your first steps inside your library is to start talking to the right people in your organization and to sell them on some of the concepts we've talked here today and what it could mean for your library. And really, you do need to understand that it is absolutely work, but it's not always new work. It might be tweaking the way you're already doing things. It might be amending a policy here and there. It might be engaging in a new project with your community. So it can run the gamut of those things, but just remember, you're in control. You pick the level of work you're doing in these action items. And again, no time constraint. You can take your time and do these things at a pace that's comfortable for you. And you would want to form what we call your first generation sustainability team. So that's finding like your early adopters, the people in your organization who get it, who can help, at least get you a running start at this work and are helping to sell the idea in the organization. And I would say if you're at that point, then call over to the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. That's a good time to jump in and start doing the work. So to get started, you would just contact us and get yourself set up in the online dashboard. And just for the New Jersey people on the line, just a reminder, you've got a 20% discount on the certification fee until October 14th. And you could sign up before then and maybe not start for a little while, and you're still okay, because remember, there's no ticking clock. But at that point, you get an orientation to the website and see how everything works. You'd meet your mentor, who would help you do a couple of beginning exercises that get you off to a strong start. You'd administer a staff survey. So again, you don't want the first time your staff hears about this to be that survey. You'd want to be building excitement about it before they saw a survey on the topic. But the survey helps you see what your staff thinks of your organization's current commitment to sustainability, where they think there's work to be done, and also helps you identify other people in the organization that might really be helpful in doing the work around the certification program. And we administered the survey. It helped us connect with a staff person who's very quiet, but they were actually extremely passionate about this work. And it was someone I never would have thought to tap to do work in this area, but they ended up being one of our MVPs. They just were great at research and helped us make much better decisions along our path to certification. And then you form your second generation team, which is where you kind of reform based on people who raised their hand and said, I'm interested in helping with this, and getting the right skills that you need on that team. And then you'll engage in a process that helps you go actually kind of like this feels like a game show where you just do a quick assessment of all the action items and just say, yep, we've done that one, or oh, we're halfway done with that one already. And then you've got the ones that we've never even thought of. We've never touched those. And that creates your jumping off point to understand how you're going to approach the remaining work to become certified. And you build your plan, maybe with the help of your mentor. So I think that, I'm making it seem like boom, 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 and then you're going, but this is the work. These are the first few steps that you take to get off to a really strong start. And then again, you've got regular contact with your mentor, the monthly meetups with other people in the program. And we do encourage folks to come to the monthly meetups, even if you haven't done anything since the last monthly meetup. Sometimes you just need that spark to get going again, or some inspiration from one of the quarterly webinars we do, or one of the monthly meetups that we offer. So I should mention that as well. We do quarterly webinars on topics that relate to the certification work. So you can see those live when we schedule them, but you also have access to the archive of the webinars that have already been offered on things like strategic planning and equity, diversity, and inclusion, and all sorts of helpful stuff that would relate to work you might choose to do through the certification program. So I did mention before, there is a cost for certification. And of course, if we could just do it for free, we would have. But obviously there's costs to running that website and having staff that support the work that you do. So we think the price is fair. We think you will save at least that money through some of the work you do in the certification program. And at the end of the day, I think when you're all done with it, I don't think there's a person who's been certified, a library that's been certified, that hasn't thought it was actually a bargain by the end of the work. From the support you get, to the good it does in your organization, to the money you can potentially save, to the possible grants that you bring into your organization, I think it creates really a platform for success for you in a number of ways. And that's certainly been borne out by folks in the program. So if you're not familiar, this is the website. You can just snap that QR code and get right there. If you're not sold on it yet, you just want to dip your toe in, there's lots of free resources on the website. Everyone in New Jersey, you're already a member, so you have access to the curated resources, the on-demand webinars, a vendor list, which has been vetted by people in the program. So we don't let people pay to get on the vendor list. It has to be recommended by a library that's actually worked with a vendor that's helped solve a problem related to items in the certification program. And then you've got other opportunities that arise. So just recently, we negotiated a partnership with the American Library Association, and we were able to offer 25 free seats to an e-course we developed in partnership with them. Eric Tanz is online today, and Mandy, who are in that class right now, which is pretty cool. Not sure why you're listening to me so much, but thank you. And then obviously the certification program is where you're getting access to that online dashboard, all of the examples that you would need to be successful in those action items, your mentor, and the meetups and other opportunities. Sometimes people in the program, we can see kind of a trend in questions that are getting asked that might shape a curated program or meetup where we specifically dive a little deeper on a topic people are curious about or struggling with, to help unstuck people and maybe broaden their thinking about things that they're doing. So I'm going to leave the this page up here while I check out what questions that you have been asking. I see here a question: are there plans to build a certification for library associations at the state level? Well, it's certainly on my wish list, but I'll say that we did build one for library systems in New York State, which might actually translate well for library associations. So I'm happy to take a look at that and work with you to see if that might work. People are asking about the certification fee. You can see that right on the website. It's a sliding scale based on your budget. So you can take a look at that at sustainablelibrariesinitiative.org. And let's see, I've already joined as an individual member. Is there help for me? I'm gonna have to come back to that one. And let's see, I've got a very long question here, so bear with me while I read it. Oh, anonymous attendee, I wish you shared your name so I could give you a virtual high five. This is fabulous. This person, I don't know if everyone can see the question or not, but this is someone who has done really a lot of work to get EV charging stations. They got a grant for a Charlie cart to offer food nutrition programs. They've got donors working on assisting them to create a reading garden that's going to be built next year. That's so exciting. How can we fulfill this goal? So I wonder if the question is related to building the reading garden and looking at native plants and seeding for people in that environment. And so we can say that there are action items related in the certification program related to doing an assessment of the landscaping of the property at a public library and making sure you know what's on your property, and education about native plants. And for those of you that aren't familiar with why we care about that issue, if you use native plants, it means they should thrive based on the average rainfall in your region. So you shouldn't have to do extra watering. So it conserves water on your land as well as respects the natural ecology and biodiversity of your area. So I think that for anonymous attendee asking this question, this is exactly the kind of thing you can get input on from the community of practice, as well as resources from your mentor and other folks who have done this work. So I think the answer is yes, we can help you with that. I might not be able to help you more than I already have right now. And I just want to make sure I went back to this question that Julie asked. I get it now. Okay, so yes, absolutely, we can help you with educating your key stakeholders. So if you're the kind of the champion for the work in your organization, that can really feel lonely sometimes. I know, because I was that person for a long time in my world. So yeah, absolutely, if you need help with talking points or making a presentation, or you'd like us to help you with that, I know I'm happy to help you with that. And I bet other people in the program are as well. So Julie, the quick answer is yes to that. And I'm about to give you my contact info. So please do reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with that. I'm just going to see here. I see Matt's been busy in the chat box. I'm putting the links in here. You've got the link to the pricing there, as well as our events calendar, which is very cool. Let's see if I missed anything else. I don't think I did, but I'm happy to answer any other questions folks have. Here, I see Dorothy's got a question. Oh, Dorothy's got a really good question. She's asking here, for certification, have you had to work through situations where the library is in a city building but managed by the county? It has been complicated so far to achieve certain goals. And so Dorothy, I feel you. Like, we definitely have other people in situations where they're not in control over their facility. And it's a very big issue for academic libraries who live on a campus that's controlled by other departments that in terms of the built environment. So yeah, we've actually had to figure that out in a lot of different ways. There is definitely the acknowledgement through the program that you don't control everything about that situation. So what we do look for is something that Matthew Bollerman and I learned about through the Living Futures Institute. If you're not familiar with them, they do the Living Buildings Challenge, which is like a very big step above a LEED certified building. They really think about buildings that are not just sustainable and resilient, but also regenerative and actually putting energy and good things back into our communities. And one of the things they noted is that if you could at least take an advocacy role, if you talked to the building owner or the department that actually oversees that building, and you made your case and you helped them understand where you were coming from. Maybe they still said no, but just describe that in the action item. You approached them, you made your case, you explained there's these opportunities. You didn't get to where you hoped you would, but you did advocate for the action item with the person who has ultimate control over that item. That would completely suffice for that answer to that action item. That is something that I think we all have realities we have to face, that sometimes we just don't control that issue. One of the items is recommended is to make sure your facility is on a public transportation route. You certainly don't control that, right? But you could demonstrate how you advocated for that on behalf of the people that you serve, and that would be absolutely acceptable to answer that question. Oh, and Matt, thanks for putting that Living Future link into the chat there. That's some advanced level stuff. But let me tell you, if you are you have the opportunity to build a new building, one of those key things when it comes to sustainability is that you think about sustainability very early on in your process for a construction project or a renovation project. And so getting to know what certification programs are out there, from Passive House to Green Globes, LEED, which is very familiar to many people, and then this one, which in our opinion is really the cream of the crop, the Living Building Challenge. It is next level, people. They're talking about sourcing just about every component you would use to construct something and how you avoid toxic chemicals in all of those construction materials. It's an education in and of itself just to learn about the program, and I think it's really useful. Like, even if you never did that certification, I found it to be really useful. So Dorothy, let's see, has the certification program thought about structuring and advocating for a sustainable library position in every library? Wouldn't that be amazing? So Dorothy, I'll just say that one of the volunteer roles I did at ALA, I served as co-chair of the task force on sustainability from council a few years ago, and we provided 52 recommendations to the library community, one of which was for communities of a certain population to hire a sustainability coordinator. I think the threshold was if you serve 1 million or more people, but I think anyone could see at this point that having a long-term position committed to doing work in this area makes a lot of sense. Most libraries might not be able to afford a position that singularly just does that, but out of this program, I've seen at least 2 job descriptions that have changed. So at the Lindenhurst Library, they actually redid a job description, and that person's responsibilities now include being the sustainability coordinator. I think the Patchogue Medford Library in the program also did that. They created a whole new position of a sustainability coordinator. So that person not only led the charge through the certification program, but is still in that role to make sure the life and the intent of the work that was done continues on in that work. So I think, Dorothy, the answer is yes, but it's not something we've prescribed. We think that's something that might intimidate some folks away from the program, but it's certainly recommended. And we've got a growing body of libraries that are going in that direction, which is really cool. All right. Yeah. Shout out, Mary Catherine. New Jersey folks, I hope you know that there is a sustainability and resilience section of NJLA now that Mary Catherine got started. And of course, it needs members. So I hope you'll throw the membership fee over that way and show up at their events. And Mary Catherine's provided her contact info there in the chat. So we've got a few more questions here. So there's a question here about library systems and how a system would get certified. Would the whole system get certified, or is it separate certifications for each library? I'm wondering if we mean a branch of a library, or if you're a cooperative system like mine, where I have independent libraries. So I'll say a different answer for each of those constructs. So in my world in New York, a library system is a cooperative, and we have members that are independent. So I became certified as a system. Each of my libraries would have to be certified because they're independent. But if you're a system in which you have multiple branches, so meaning multiple facilities, there's just one certification process for that entity, regardless of how many facilities that you have. And let's see, next question, Albert Weisner Public Library. Nice, Teresa. We're afraid to start and have not had time to devote to this. Does it make sense to just get started and work on it as much as we can, or wait until we have we feel time to devote to it? I would say that it's one of those things you should probably just dive into. I certainly, if I confronted my calendar and the reality of what the work I do, I never would have started. But what I saw was a critical mass of support in my organization. I saw My staff were really excited about the potential of it. My board was really excited about the potential of it. And we all agreed that let's just give it a try. Let's start working through it, because once we took the time, and maybe you devote a day or two as a retreat to understand what the work is, you'll just find these natural opportunities to get the action items done. But if you don't take the time to understand what it is, you'll never kind of do the work. So I don't know, I'm an advocate, just go ahead and give it a try. Again, no ticking clock. So you can do it at your own pace. And I think you'd be surprised, it might go faster than you think, with the exception of those libraries that were working on this during the first year and a half, 2 years of the pandemic. They're moving through it pretty quickly, actually, quicker than they thought they would. And I think that, again, speaks to the fact that you're already doing many things that fit the needs of the action items in the certification program. Again, not all, there's definitely things you haven't done yet, but it might move quicker than you think. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and get started, but you would want to devote a little time right at the beginning to really get to know it, get familiar with it, so you can see the opportunities as they arise. Like I said, it's stuff you're going to be doing anyway. You might as well do it with the triple bottom line lens in mind while you're doing the work. Okay. Oh, Ellen, thanks for clarifying. A library system with multiple branches. So I think you've got the answer that you need there. Yeah, we actually have the, get this, the San Diego County library system in California with a lot of buildings. They are working on this right now, but they're working on one certification for the entity, not one for each building. All right, so I see we're at our end time. I just want to share my contact info. You've obviously, so right now you've got the site, you know how to get to the site, and contact us through there if you want to get started. And here's my personal contact information if you want to reach out to talk more about it, or you need help selling it to somebody, or you just want to chit chat about cool things you're doing. I'm up for that too. But I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here, to learn more about the certification program. And I really want to thank the New Jersey Library Association for blazing a new trail here on behalf of your membership, to opening the door to even think about some of this work. I think is extremely valuable. So I just want to thank Jessica and the New Jersey Library Association for the opportunity to speak with you today. And I wish you well, and hopefully our paths cross again. Thanks so much, everyone.